Hi everyone. Today we are going to continue our two-part lecture on classroom management and creating a culturally inclusive classroom environment while still maintaining good management practices. The last time we discussed the three R's, which included respect, relationship, and rapport. And today we're going to be discussing the three P's. In your last assignment, we had some case studies for you to analyze. And at the end of this lecture, I hope you take the information from both recorded lectures and really think about your expectations in the classroom and what you plan on doing to create a culturally inclusive classroom management style. So what are the three P's? They're pretty simple, and I think they're really important right now because we all would like to see this from our college instructors, as well as when we head back to school in the fall for my current K through 12 teachers. The first is being positive, the second proactive, and the third are procedures. So let's get into this. Being positive is the most important piece to culturally inclusive classroom management. I know what you're thinking. No, Hollander, it's procedures. Yes, procedures are very, very important, but everyone can have procedures, but not every student's going to feel included in that environment unless their teacher is positive. Showing love to students for who they simply are. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be syrupy sweet and always be loving on your students and complimenting them. No, I know some of you, your style is going to be that you don't compliment often and you are going to run a tight ship. But that doesn't mean that you can't show your students that you care for them. That doesn't mean that we can't be empathetic towards whatever struggles they're dealing with that day. That doesn't mean that we can't be sensitive to their needs or what's happening at home or in the classroom. That doesn't mean that we can't show kindness, forgiveness, and patience. And some of us have a real knack for humor, and humor can be a great tool for creating a positive atmosphere. Humor can also get us in trouble, so if you're not very good with humor, maybe you hold back on that one. But I do think we can all think back to a teacher who has had a tremendous impact on our lives and know that they were kind in their own way. It might be that when you're having a really bad day, like in that TED Talk, that teacher pulled you away, gave you a talking to, and then gave you a snack and let you chill out. Or maybe your parents were going through a divorce or something bad was happening at home, and that teacher understood that they need to show empathy and sensitivity towards you during that difficult time. Either way, there's always an opportunity for us to be kind and positive towards our students. And I hope that you feel in my class that I am always showing you guys positivity because I recognize that many of you are extremely stressed out, balancing your work-life balance, things that are going on at home, etc. Another piece to your classroom management is being proactive. You need to be ahead of the curve in the classroom management game. What does that mean? That means you need to predict potential problems and know where trouble arises. If you are planning an activity with your students, you need to already be thinking, how am I going to keep my students on task? What am I going to be doing about that student that's extremely disruptive? How am I going to manage my classroom if they're going to be moving from station to station? What are the expectations that my students should know before we even start this super fun activity? And most importantly, and this goes back to the first part of our class, we really need to know our students. You need to know who's going to be able to handle doing stations or being able to add movement or have a dance party in that classroom or be able to discuss difficult topics. You need to know what is happening in your schoolyard. I don't need you guys to be getting the gossip from your students, but you should be able to detect who's being bullied, who's becoming an outcast in your classes, who is having a difficult time this week with various academic coursework. If someone's having real issues in your classroom, finding out if there's something going on at home. that can help you figure out how to stay one step ahead of your students so that you can manage your classroom. So here's an example of how you accomplish proactivity. One would be change your classroom environment. An example, if you have a sticky fingered student. So if you have a student who likes to steal things or hoard things, instead of watching the student constantly and carefully and wasting your energy, why not just remove anything of interest off your desk so that they can't take it? I know this sounds very easy, but I mean, if you have a student who cannot handle having technology around them and cannot focus on what you're saying or what the class is doing, then remove that distractor, or remove what might be stolen, or create a procedure so that students don't start causing a ruckus during your laboratory exercise or during an interactive activity. And finally, procedures. I think procedures are so very important for classroom management. Depending on a list of rules is ineffective. You need unwritten procedures to determine your success, and it needs to be done every day without thought. Routines should be established on day one and explicitly taught and periodically reviewed. For example, the first day that you guys came into my class, I introduced myself. I told you I was a military spouse, and I told you that I grew up with early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. What that means for me is I expect everybody to be seated at their desk by the time class starts. Does not mean that you need to be here early, but I do expect you to be there on time and that I plan on being on time as well. I also explicitly told you all that how I want to be addressed, which is I'd like to be addressed by Dr. Hollander or Professor Hollander, and I explained why. And then finally, I explicitly explained my expectations with technology, that I understood you all were adults and that you may need your cell phones handy, but that I would appreciate you guys putting them away and not getting distracted by text messages, by GChat, and anything else that you might be doing on your computers, and that I will call you out if you are utilizing your technology in an inappropriate manner during my lessons. I think for you as middle school and high school teachers, it's really important for you to decide what is it that you are willing to put up with and what you're not willing to put up with. Do you expect your students to walk quietly into the classroom? Or maybe you don't care and you're going to let them be loud and crazy. It's all good. Where are your students going to put their personal belongings? Do you expect them to put them against the wall and only have the materials they need for class? Or can they bring everything to their desks? Do they have a place where they're supposed to turn in their papers or pick up papers? Are they required to have name cards or name tags? And at what point do you expect to get started with your class that day? So I think having those procedures are really important, and more importantly, you cannot expect your students to read your mind. You need to explicitly explain your expectations of them and remind them of those expectations when they forget. So during your observations, either in the classroom or over video, what did you see that worked and what did not work? Did you feel like at any point the wheels were coming off? I feel like with those YouTube videos, you're not really going to see that because teachers probably said, I'm going to video this lesson and you have to behave. But for those who got to observe lessons in the classroom, like what do you think worked out really well and what do you think did not work out so well? So here's an example of someone establishing procedures. Now this is in an elementary school class, but I would hope that you could apply some of these same types of procedures in your middle school and high school classes.
So school's going to start next week, and I have already been anxious for the last week and a half. I've had the butterflies. We always assume that new teachers are the ones that are going through that, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I've already been teaching, this is my 12th year, and I still get the jitteriness, I still get the anxiousness, I still can't sleep the night before. It's very normal to still be nervous. So when it comes to classroom management and discipline, I like to make sure that my students know that this classroom is a welcoming environment, but at the same time that there's going to be expectations and strategies that they have to follow. I always like having them something to do as they come in the room so that it gives me time to take attendance, or if I have a parent that needs to talk to me. This isn't what I usually have them do. That takes a little bit longer, but I figured this is something that they know what to do as soon as they come in. Alexandria, if you want to do me a favor, actually, do you want to be my caboose? My caboose is a very important job. My caboose is the one that makes sure that she is at the end of the line, making sure that nobody gets lost between now and the time we get to class. So you need to make sure that everybody stays in line. So go ahead and take that job behind Idris, please. So my first day, I really don't waste any time. I think I need to let students know that we're back to business, right away. So when I needed them to stand in that line, I had to show them, this is your square, you need to stand here. So I had to show them, where their square was and what I meant by putting their 2 feet in there and that kind of thing, so that they exactly knew what my expectation was. This is how you're going to come in every morning when we get to class. And if you're too close to her, you can always leave a little room, and that's perfectly okay. So when students come in right away, I want to set just the tone of what my expectations are immediately. So that's why I start with my rules. And the 2 rules that I emphasize the most on is I really like to teach students to be respectful. I think that's something that we need to, students need to know from, a young age. So I focused a lot on them using, being respectful and using the words please and using the words thank you. Rule number 3. And this is actually going to go into one of our school-wide rules, which is to respect others, respect yourself, and respect your school. And later I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what it means to be respectful. A big, very important word for me in this classroom is right here. Say please. If you are asking someone to let you borrow their eraser or their pencil or any material, you say, may I please borrow your pencil? May I please borrow your eraser? So the word please for me is very important because you are being respectful to that person. So that is part of my classroom rule. So routines and procedures are crucial. Basically the way that I do it for me, and I know it works differently for everybody, but for me it's I take whatever it is that I expect for them and I have to make sure that I model everything. So I model it, we practice, we recorrect or pre-correct, and then model again and continue to practice. So there's routines and procedures for everything, even for the most minute thing. I can't assume that students already know how to do things. Another thing that you're going to want to ask me for permission is to get a new pencil. Now, sometimes I understand the pencils do break, but guess what? We're still using not the big fat pencils, but we're using the medium-sized pencils. These are very hard to break. But if it does break, you take your pencil and you lift it up in the air like this. You wait for me until I give you a direction and tell you, yes, you may grab a new pencil. Notice what I'm doing right now. I'm shaking my head, right? I'm nodding. I'm telling you, yes, you can grab a new pencil. If I give you permission to grab a new pencil, you quietly get out of your seat, you carefully walk to this corner of the room. In this corner of the room, we have 2 different containers. One container says, unsharpened. The other container says sharpened. So if you need a new pencil, you just quickly, notice how I said quickly, you take the pencil that broke, you put it in there, and you quickly grab another pencil, and you get back to your seat. Now, your pencils do have your number on them.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, Hollander, I'm going to teach high school. Did you really just show me what I'm supposed to do with students who don't have pencils? Well, guess what? In high school, this is still a problem. So I wanted to show you a procedure that you could do so that your students know. Obviously, in high school, you wouldn't have your students raising their hand to get that pencil, but you should be prepared for something like that. So normally if we were in class, not during a pandemic, you would be doing the Think, Pair, Share activity. And this is what I would have you do. You would fill out this form. So how would you want your class to officially begin? What should students do when work is complete? What should students do when they do not have supplies or need to sharpen a pencil? What is going to be your management style for cell phones, headphones, and other technologies like tablets and iPads? What are you going to do about late assignments? How do you want your students to get your attention, and how do you want your students to enter and exit the classroom? So instead of doing this as a classroom activity, like I normally do, this is part of your discussion board. And if you have any questions about any of the materials that I've shared with you today, please contact me, and I'm always available through virtual office hours and email. Have a great week. Thank you.